Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Way of BJJ podcast. This is Minju, and I'm here to bring you the podcast where we talk to interesting people about everything Jiu-Jitsu. So please leave us a 5-star review because that really helps us out and motivates us to create more awesome contents like these. And as always, these conversations contains foul languages, inappropriate analogies, so it's best not to listen to it around your kids. Now let's get to the podcast.
All right, let's go. Dude, thank you, Rob, for being my guest on the Way of BJJ podcast. So, see, the podcast is going places now. We're going to random places to just interviewing people, which is kind of cool, you know?
We got people playing ping pong in the background.
I know, yeah. So what's happening here today?
This is the Pacific Northwest Open. I've only got one student competing today, so I actually have a little bit of time. Usually at tournaments, I'm just running to all the mats and screaming and taking fisherman's friend to make sure I don't lose my voice. So I've actually got some time at a tournament today to talk. So good timing.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, so I know a lot of people are actually really excited for you to be on my show. Yeah.
Well,
and I can see why, because I think you have a reputation. Out there, good or bad, right? Good or bad, because I think either people like you, love you, and hate you, but as long as they care, that's all that matters, So yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you got started in jiu-jitsu? Take us back to the origin.
I got started hoping that as many people would hate me as possible. I got started through basically MMA training. When everybody, I'm 47, so as I'm sure as everybody in my age bracket, I watched the UFC. I saw the effect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I started seeking out training. It wasn't that easy to find it back then, so I did a lot of different martial arts before I actually started doing Jiu-Jitsu, and I was always training basically for MMA, so I was always doing striking, some wrestling, and of the arts within the mixed martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu was always the one that appealed to me the most. It was the most cerebral. It was the one that didn't require you to be a good athlete to actually be successful, and so I kind of honed in on that and focused on, as I realized that I wasn't going to be an MMA fighter, focused on trying to become as good an instructor as I possibly could be, focused on trying to understand Jiu-Jitsu. Was exposed to Ryan Hall's material, who's highly influential on my teaching career. And he was the first guy to sort of speak the language that I spoke about Jiu-Jitsu, as a voracious reader, as a nerd, a cerebral guy who wants things to make kind of perfect sense from a physics aspect. That's what I gravitated towards, and so that's kind of the genesis of my teaching style, my approach to Jiu-Jitsu, and then I'm obviously highly influenced by my current coach, Caio Terra, and I've trained with a lot of different people. And then probably the reason most people know me is because I was introduced to Stephen Kesting almost 10 years ago, and we've done several projects together, which led to me having a following of fellow nerds who like to hear me talk about Jiu-Jitsu in a physics-related manner. And as a result of that, I now have an online academy, which is bjjconcepts.net or .com. Both will get there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we bought bjjconcepts.com later on, and so either URL.
Man, those fucking bastards.
Yeah. No, actually, what's funny? Somebody who was a fan emailed me, and he actually had the domain name.
Oh, nice.
Wasn't using it for he had bought it a while ago for something. He just transferred it to me. It was just the nominal fee of whatever standard. So that was actually
you got it.
Being slightly internet famous helped me a little bit. I think that's pretty much how people would know me, positively, is just through my instructional work, and through being an advocate of both conceptual jiu-jitsu and the idea of gamification. If you've, one of the things you may have heard of me about is the fuck your jiu-jitsu kind of system of games that we use to increase the rate of improvement at my academy. People probably also know me a little bit for leg locks, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you pretty much just summarized your your entire career
There you go.
within like 2 minutes.
There you go.
Know, so, but that,
Jiu-Jitsu is all about efficiency.
I know. But obviously, there's a lot that you had to skim over.
Sure.
Right, because that was kind of the broad
Cliff's notes. Yeah.
Yeah, the cliff notes of your life, right?
Yeah.
So, I always like to again learn about you as a person as well. Right? So I don't know what I'm gonna find, if I'm gonna like it or not. But where were you from? Where were you born? And were you born and raised here?
I was born in Warsaw, Poland.
Oh, yeah?
And then I lived all over Europe. I also lived in Africa for a little while.
Oh, wow.
And then my family moved to Canada when I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh,
my dad was a Canadian citizen, so I was a citizen when I was born because he had worked in Canada in like the 60s and 70s. He was a civil engineer. So he was here long enough to gain his citizenship. So even though I was born abroad, I was born a Canadian citizen. So we came here at one point and settled in Vancouver. Cool. So I was a Vancouver kid, Burnaby kid.
Nice. See, I would have never learned that unless I asked you that question, because listening to your podcast, nobody ever asked it about it.
Well, I mean, thank you for showing. I don't think that's the stuff that people want to know, but if they do, that's wonderful. It's
Yeah. Or how else am I going to distinguish myself from like the BJJ mental models and stuff, right?
There you go.
Because I always tell people, like, hey, if you listen to the Kwan brothers, right?
Yeah.
They're so articulate. They're so good at talking about jiu-jitsu that I cannot compete with that. So I'm gonna ask you about all these kind of other stuff that people might be interested in.
I appreciate it.
Nice. So it's a Polish, right? So
mostly Polish, German, but mostly Polish.
All right. So would that be your mother tongue then?
No, actually. So like I spoke English growing up.
Oh, nice.
So like when I was born, because both my parents spoke English.
Right.
I spoke English. I did speak some Polish. So yeah, no, Polish is my second language. English is my first language.
Gotcha. Yeah. So do you still know how to speak Polish, German?
Yeah, I mean, I probably speak at the level of like a 4th or 5th grader. I don't have like I can hold a conversation.
Right.
I can't communicate. I would say I can't communicate intelligently. I can't communicate, higher level concepts of any sort. I don't have any like technical jargon. Like it would be very, very difficult for me to try to teach jiu-jitsu in Polish, for example.
Right. Have you gone back to do like seminars and stuff out that way?
No. I'm actually doing a European seminar tour next fall in September, and somebody asked me about that on Instagram. Was like, "Oh, are you coming to Poland?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Why not?" I'm like, "Well, nobody asked." Right? Like well, it's not even about that. It's that literally no one asked. So like I put it up an Instagram post because I got asked to do a like an immersion camp in Greece, like a 5-day camp on the beach. I was like, it's like I'd love to, but that's still a lot of travel because travel for me by plane is a little bit difficult. But it's a lot of travel to get to Europe just for 5 days. So it's like if I can do an extended seminar tour and be there for a few weeks, I'd love to do it. So I put up
way more worth it for sure.
Yeah, so I put up an Instagram post and I just got like instantly. So I kind of had in mind I'd like to have like no more than 10 spots. I filled 5 spots first, filled the 5 spots immediately, opened it up to some more spots, filled those spots. So all of the places that reached out to me were all like Western Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, UK, that kind of stuff. Literally no one from Eastern Europe contacted me. None of the gyms there contacted me. So people are like, why aren't you going to Poland? Aren't you Polish? I'm like, well, Poland didn't support me at all. Like,
yeah, what the fuck? Guys?
Yeah, so yeah.
Guys, drop the ball here. Come on, it's not too late.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is too late because everything's locked in. So
it's too late, guys.
If I do another one, So that's why I haven't been there. There's been
not by choice. You would have loved to.
I mean,
if they reached out.
Let's be diplomatic and say that.
Yes. Yeah. As diplomatic as you can.
As I can be. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. So now let's go back to the martial art. I think that was a pretty good pretty good thing for people to learn more about you as a person, right?
Yeah.
So now let's get back to the jiu-jitsu stuff.
Sure.
So you did say that you were doing other martial arts and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So how did you come to the realization that, or why did you come to the realization that, hey, jiu-jitsu is actually the one I want to focus on?
Well, like I said, it was pretty much the exposure to the UFC, right? As a kid, I started with, well, as a really young kid, I started with karate, and then like everybody, probably when I was like 5 or 6, did a few months of karate. But really, as a teenager, started with taekwondo, and then I got my black belt in taekwondo, and then
What, you're like a year, 2 years? No.
a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Yeah, no, that's what,
The
again,
cliche is true, right?
Cliche is absolutely true. Year and a half. So I didn't feel like that was obviously representative of a level of commitment that you would need to become an expert at something. So yeah, I just sought out other martial arts, and it really was just, it came down to, it was the UFC. It was just watching that as a, science nerd, as somebody who is interested in empiricism. When you have empirical proof that something works,
Right.
that
Spoke to you, right?
it's hard to go beyond that. I mean, obviously there was a lot of marketing involved in the first UFC, and
True.
opponent selection and all that kind
But
of
they
stuff.
were legit.
Of course, all very legit.
fighters,
And
for sure, yeah.
I don't think you can argue the point that unless you're going to be an exceptional athlete, because you could say that you could be a boxer and a wrestler and be a more effective fighter than someone who just does jiu-jitsu, but not if you're a shitty athlete. Right? So if there's definitely an argument to be made for, you don't have to have jiu-jitsu to be able to defend yourself, to be able to fight.
That's totally true.
You can do judo and Muay Thai. You can do as long
you
as
can
you
wrestle
have
and box.
a
Yeah.
grappling art and a striking art, you can be a very effective fighter. But if you're, 120-pound guy, then being a wrestler by itself may not be enough. So I think for those of us that aren't athletically gifted, that aren't super physical, that aren't imposing, I think jiu-jitsu is still empirically the best option for being able to protect yourself for an effective martial art.
Gotcha.
So I think that's why I gravitated to
Sure.
it.
Yeah. So where was the what was the first jiu-jitsu school that you went to?
The first jiu-jitsu school that I went to wasn't actually a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. It was a Japanese jiu-jitsu school that did some grappling. And then after that, this was when I was in Vancouver. And then when I was over in Toronto, the first jiu-jitsu school I went to was Rebellion Jiu-Jitsu. It was a guy named Omar Salvosa with a partner named Steve Lin. So the two of them had Rebellion Jiu-Jitsu. And then they kind of went their separate ways after a while. But originally, that was like the first place that I was really training at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then after that, I started going to American Top Team down in Florida, where I eventually earned my black belt
Oh, cool. Yeah. So who did you get your black belt under?
from Charles McCarthy.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. I don't know who that is. But
He was a UFC fighter, chainsaw Charles McCarthy.
okay. All right. Man, dude.
It was so long ago. If you're a recent fan of the sport, there's this entire generation of fighters.
I
that people have never heard of.
I did follow UFC for a long time, but there's been so many fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But nice. Cool. Great. So now let's start talking about your philosophy and how you are doing all the stuff, right?
Sure.
So, because I know you're famous for a couple of things. The first one is that because Joseph Chen recently credited you.
He
right?
did, yeah.
He's
He gave
crediting
me a
you
shout.
on- yeah.
He gave me a shout out. It was
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's awesome. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna be a good question or not, but I'm gonna ask you anyways.
Go for it.
On the same podcast.
Craig Jones threw me under the
Yeah.
bus and then walked it back a little bit, so that was
Because,
nice. Yeah.
right, because he doesn't know the entire story, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
obviously, but
Yeah.
that poses a very interesting question, right?
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, basically they said that you took private lessons from Eddie Cummins, which is a leg lock master at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I trained
And
with him,
and then they accused you, or they implied
Yeah.
that you repackaged all those things and sold it as your own instructional. But something along those lines.
Yeah,
But, but of course, what actually happened?
I don't think that, I think that's like the broken telephone version of it, because that's definitely not what happened. What happened was oh man, there's a lot of background noise here. Is this still okay for you?
That's okay. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna hold it like a regular microphone.
Okay.
And then we will continue our discussion like that. Then the sound will be isolated.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's get it.
I trained. I trained with Eddie. We did a series of private classes, and I was trying to bring him out to Vancouver to do a seminar because I thought the stuff was so awesome. And so, as like an intro to how good this information was, I did a couple of seminars locally, and I posted, as I had done at the time, like I posted seminars on YouTube. I'd always posted seminars on YouTube. Wasn't really an issue. Gave full credit, like, hey, this is some information I got from these guys. Here's a little bit of it. And woke up to like a bunch of messages being like, the DDS guys are shitting on you on Facebook, and like this is a giant shitstorm. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll take the videos down. So that was really kind of what happened. Is like I stepped on a landmine accidentally by just trying to help promote Eddie Cummings and the information that he had given me.
Gotcha.
And there was a website called BJJ Eastern Europe that took that video and like clickbait title, mislabeled it, said that I was a Danaher black belt and that I was revealing their secrets, which was obviously not true.
You never claimed it or anything?
Yeah. All you had to do was read the description of the video to see what it was. And then I had a bunch of people messaging me being like, hey, can you send us these videos? And I was like, no, man, like they don't want this stuff out there. I took it down immediately. There's the like weird bullshit clickbait version of the story, and then there's that which actually happened. That's like the actual thing. And then like maybe about a year and a half after that, I think, after I had taken the information, been working on it myself, trying to reverse engineer it, practice it. Like I went
because obviously they don't want you back at that point.
No, of course, yeah, exactly. I went to my coach Caio Terra. We worked on it. I worked on it like after about a year and a half, I think, when I felt comfortable that I had my own information to add, and I'd been doing this stuff for a little while. We did put out a leg lock instructional. Yes. So like I said, I think there's again like the broken telephone version of that, but that's the actual story of what happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Because the way I look at it, even if you had repackaged the stuff and sold it, what the fuck is wrong with that? Isn't that what everybody?
Isn't that what Craig Jones did with the stuff? Like again, whatever. I don't care. I wouldn't do that. Like I wouldn't take something that I just learned and just straight repackage it and
just
teach
because
it.
you don't think it's part of what you can actually teach yet, right?
Yeah, like my philosophy is unless I've been doing something for at least a year, I don't try to teach it.
Yes.
And also, anytime I teach anything, I'm pretty scrupulous for like giving credit. Like I got this from this source. Like anyone that's ever watched one of my instructionals, to the point where people have messaged me like, listen, dude, it's annoying. You don't have to give like, I got this from this person on this date at this time. Like I don't ever want someone to feel like I'm misrepresenting or repackaging somebody else's information.
That's the academic in you. You have to do citations.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I try to give citations. So yeah, I think that was pretty. It was a pretty shitty experience for me because these are guys that I obviously looked up to very much, especially Eddie. Although I don't think I ever heard anything bad from Eddie about it. But yeah, it was a pretty shitty experience, especially considering how I like immediately was like, oh shit, sorry guys, I'll take it down. Like no harm intended. I was just trying to help promote really great information. Yeah. And it turned into a thing that people tried to kind of like use against me, which is whatever. If you're a little bit internet famous, you're gonna have detractors, you're gonna have people trying to tear you down. So like I get it,
but you know what they say, no publicity is bad publicity. So.
I don't agree with that. I would certainly much rather be known for just trying to put out good information than some of the stuff that came out in the aftermath of this. So yeah, it's not a fond memory. It's not something I would ever want to do. Like I was certainly not something I would ever do the way that it was presented by some people. Right. So yeah, it's just it's a shitty period, not one that I look back on fondly.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so it's enough about that. I just wanted to hear it from the man himself.
Sure.
Thanks for doing that. Speaking about it so candidly.
Yeah.
But what I really want to ask you is, are instructionals bullshit? Because there's been a recent view from people who are, because you do gamification and stuff too, right? So, but people on the extreme end of it will be like, hey, the reason why people are still doing instructionals is because they're making money off of it. If they are honest, they would tell you instructionals are bullshit.
I don't know that I've seen that statement made.
Greg Sauter says something along those lines.
Well, I'm not going to get into a pissing match with Greg. So what I will say is this: if we're going to be empirical about it, the state of jiu-jitsu for the first, several decades was very, very slow, incremental growth. A lot of secrets being kept, a lot of techniques being hidden, and a very small community of practitioners, which led to very, very slow evolution. In the years since information has become freely available on the internet, largely through instructionals, the pace of innovation of jiu-jitsu has grown exponentially. Jiu-jitsu's grown more in the last 5 years than it probably has in the previous 50 years. So if we want to make any sort of inference as to what the reason for that is, the only thing that has changed in that period of time is access to instructionals. And everyone's all of a sudden better. Like I remember when we used to come to tournaments in Vancouver when I first came here and opened my school, it was hard to find a good club. Now it's hard to find a bad club. And the level of all of the people competing, even like the kind of people who train infrequently enough, the kind of hobbyists that back in the day would have just been like objectively terrible, that almost doesn't exist anymore. Everyone's pretty decent.
Right.
And I don't think it's because the coaching has gotten way better, because I don't believe that it has. And certainly not because people are all of a sudden doing a bunch of gamification, because most places still aren't.
Right.
It's because people are taking ownership of their training, going and getting instructionals, practicing the stuff, and getting better. So I think anyone that's saying that is either trying to be intentionally inflammatory to gain traction, which totally works.
Right.
So I'm not going to knock it, or they just are like objectively lying and just don't understand like reality or like empirical information. Like
Right.
I think it's an inarguable fact.
Yeah,
that
it's
jiu-jitsu has progressed.
irrefutable.
Yeah, it's irrefutable that jiu-jitsu has progressed dramatically because of the access to good information.
Right, right,
Yeah.
and especially when the information started to get better and better.
Exactly.
Right? I remember when the John Danaher stuff came out, people were their minds were blown. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, I didn't know people can like conceptualize and talk about jiu-jitsu that way." Right? And
I've
teach it
had
that way.
literally dozens, probably hundreds of emails from subscribers or people who've purchased my instructionals who've said, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 5 years. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 12 years. I didn't understand what I was doing until I learned the concepts that you mentioned. I've had people message me say I was about to quit jiu-jitsu because all we would do is learn these random techniques, and after 5 years of training, I still sucked. And I watched the core concepts, and overnight my jiu-jitsu improved just from having a conceptual framework for why I'm supposed to do what I'm supposed to do. So I don't think there's any argument that
Right.
anyone could reasonably make.
Yeah, so
that
here's a follow-up question
instructional
then.
material is bullshit.
So here's a follow-up question then. So is
Yeah.
it a matter of people understanding how to make better instructionals?
Yes.
Because when you make instructionals, you can totally just show a bunch of random techniques.
100%. So the same issue that we've had for decades in jiu-jitsu, which is that everyone sucked at teaching because no one learned how to teach. They learned jiu-jitsu, then they wanted to teach jiu-jitsu because unless you were a very high-level competitor, the only way to make a living doing jiu-jitsu was to teach jiu-jitsu. And you just taught it the way, you just regurgitated information that you were given. There was absolutely no pedagogy. It was just the same shitty teaching methodology. This is the same thing with instructionals. It was the instructional business inherited the same really bad pedagogy of 98% of jiu-jitsu gyms. As more skillful instructors moved into the instructional space, the pedagogy got better. So like I said, in 2015, it was hard to find good information. Now it's hard to find bad information.
No, those get weeded out quick.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the progress has been pretty dramatic. There are a number of people that put out really good information in a really good manner, because and you could be a really good teacher in your gym and a really bad teacher on camera. The two are not the same thing. That's
Right.
a skill. Like I've been an advocate for a long time for subdividing the different aspects of being a jiu-jitsu teacher into discrete categories, because every one of everything in life is a skill. Conversation is a skill, but conversation for a podcast is a different skill than conversation with a girl at a bar. It's a different skill than a conversation with a child. It's a
Right.
different, like, these are all different skills. So you can't just say, oh, I'm good at conversation. Okay, what kind of conversation are you good at? So I'm good at teaching jiu-jitsu. Well, okay, are you good at teaching jiu-jitsu to a group? Are you good at teaching jiu-jitsu to a mixed group of advanced practitioners and beginners? Are you good at teaching jiu-jitsu to women? Are you good at teaching jiu-jitsu to children? Like, I'm fucking terrible at teaching jiu-jitsu to children. I don't want kids of my own. I don't interact very well with kids. Once they're like, 12, 13, whatever, once they're little adults, I can teach them fine. But I absolutely would be the worst person to teach 5 to 8 year olds. I don't have the patience. I have a low tolerance for stupidity. There's no way I could teach kids. So I think most people would say, at least give me credit that Rob Biernacki is a pretty good teacher. Whatever else they might think about me, they'd be like, but I would subdivide that further into categories where, like, I am not a good kids class teacher, like, definitely not. So I think every aspect of what we do as instructors, as teachers, as club owners, whatever, those are all slivers that you can subdivide into a skill that you need to cultivate. So, like, some people are fantastic teachers in class, but they're dog shit at cornering people in tournaments. They just don't yell any useful information. Some people teach great group classes, but terrible seminars.
Right.
Some people teach great private classes, but don't teach great group class. Like, there's so many skills that you have to cultivate, and I think teaching to a camera, teaching an instructional based on what you anticipate the audience is going to be and making sure it meets the needs of that audience is its own skill. And even guys who are quite good at, like, presenting jiu-jitsu as information are still enter the instructional space with a lot to learn. And I think that's come a long way. So, like, just, every year it's going to get better. It's going to get better because people learn more and more. So yeah, I think we're in a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
I am excited.
in jiu-jitsu, like, maybe not an exciting time in the world, yeah, but in jiu-jitsu, at least as far as that goes, I think it's pretty fantastic what's happened.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Yeah, so let's just check the time, and
Yeah,
we're still good.
Yeah, we're still good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
Very nice. Good stuff. Yeah. When the conversation flows, it feels really good. So let's talk about your so why did you wait until now to start releasing instructionals about, the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu, the gamification?
Oh yeah, so
about-
just for context, I just filmed an instructional with Stefan for it's Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu and gamification. It's
Yeah,
gonna
do
be
you want to start by telling people what the fuck your jiu-jitsu
yeah.
is?
So well, let's just to answer your question. I didn't start just releasing material. It's because every instructional that I've done, I've referred to this methodology.
Right.
My online academy has its own section dedicated to both Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu and mini games, gamification. So this is something I've been talking about in instructionals at my academy to visiting students on podcasts for the better part of a decade.
Right.
We filmed an instructional recently with Stefan entirely dedicated to Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu and gamification because it seems like people are willing to embrace it more nowadays. People are coming around to the idea that the normal way of learning is far from ideal. I mean, when we say the normal way of learning, we mean here's a technique, here are the details of that technique, practice that technique a few times, and then go ahead and roll. So, like, the quality of the information that you're getting might be much better, but the method that you're using to develop it in most gyms is still pretty lackluster.
Right.
And so the best way to develop information or develop skill, regardless of whether that information is coming from an instructional, your coach, or it's something you're trying to develop through self-organization, through ecological methods, whatever you want to call it, I think the best way for the most part is through the trial and error that comes with playing games against active resistance. And how you design those games will determine what kind of yield you get, what kind of result you get. So we have a whole bunch of different games. The main one being Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu, which is a constraints-based game. So, like, you can design games out of anything. And some games won't really have much in the way of constraints. Some games will. So with Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu, that's kind of our proprietary constraints-based system. And we're just using it to mostly introduce the skills or develop the skills that historically people in jiu-jitsu have referred to as or thought of as intangibles, like being difficult to sweep or being good at finishing sweeps or like guard retention, although now guard retention is a well-established skill that is taught. But if you go back 5 years, people were like, well, you just get good at it. Like, guys who are flexible or guys who work like, fat purple belts who are 40 aren't going to have good guard retention because that's just a thing. I, I didn't agree to that, or I didn't agree with that. I always thought that was something that could be taught. So we had Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu games based around creating certain constraints on the participants. Usually in Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu, the constraint is on one person. So the term comes from like, I don't give a fuck about your jiu-jitsu. It comes from, I'm going to allow you to do whatever you want, but I'm going to restrict myself from doing everything that I want. I'm going to set certain limits for me. So like, if I want to work on guard retention, the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu game for that is based around the guard player cannot make any grips. They cannot attack offensively. They can't use their guard in any way to slow the other person down. They can only use defensive reactive movements, framing, high legging, grand being, like any guard retention movement is fine. Whereas the passer can try to pass in any way they want. So that's an example of a game that you can use to develop really good guard retention and also quite good passing.
Right,
Because if you're trying to develop good guard passing, but you're dealing with a guard player who's better than you and they just sweep you and submit you over and over again, you are never given the affordance for learning how to actually do passing live. So it benefits both practitioners equally, and you can it's scalable in that you can change the level of constraint that you're putting on yourself based on your partner's skill level. So like if I'm a lot better than you, I will use a higher level of constraint for myself and give you more freedom. If I'm a little bit closer to you in skill, I might reduce the level of constraint. And if we're equal in skill, I might reduce it further. So it's scalable, it's modular, it's adjustable for disparate skill levels, body types, size differences, that kind of thing. So that was the original idea behind it, and that's something that I've used at my academy for over a decade.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's something that some most high-level guys intuitively do that when they go against like somebody of a much lesser level.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, some do and some don't.
It depends, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Right. Just because then so they get to kind of fuck around with the other guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So is that the intention of the name behind the?
Well, so the name actually came from when I was at Ryan Hall's academy, and he gave a speech in class where he said that if he goes into somebody's guard 100 times and he gets swept or submitted 100 times, on the 101st time, he's going to walk into that guy's guard like he doesn't give a fuck about their jiu-jitsu. So that was actually the genesis, just to show you how influential Ryan's been on my career. And so I took that idea and tried to make a game out of it, because the thing that I find the most impairing of people's progress in jiu-jitsu is actually their state of mind when they train. I always say that half of my job is teaching jiu-jitsu, the other half is teaching people how to learn jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Because most people are abysmal students. Like as adults, once you're out of high school, you're out of university, if you've spent a certain amount of time like outside of the school environment, you forget how to learn.
Right. It's kind of a weird thing, right?
Yeah, unless you're very dedicated to a hobby, unless you're very dedicated to being a lifelong student, most people are really terrible at learning. And even people who are in school are by and large terrible at learning, because school isn't really optimized for that. It's more optimized for creating obedient future employees.
That
kind of stuff.
Directives and stuff. Yeah.
So there's not a ton of people out there who are like really good at learning, and the biggest thing that interferes with people's progress is viewing practice as fighting, viewing practice as competition, and not being able to get out of their own way, and their level of intensity being inappropriate for developing skill. So by creating a set of rules and a set of games based around this idea of, I don't give a fuck what you're going to do. I'm here to learn. I'm here to figure this shit out.
Right.
So, if you just keep sweeping me, I'm going to get up and let you try and do this and that. So that was the genesis behind it, is creating a set of rules that took people out of the mindset of, I've got to win at all costs, and into the mindset of, how can I approach a role to gain the greatest amount of development from that role.
Right. Yeah. So for other people who are in the ecological camp and stuff, right? They
Sure.
would cite like the scientific research from like Dr. Rob Biernacki and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
For to credit to inspire them to go in this direction. So what
Yeah.
was your inspiration? Like, how did you eventually come across?
I mean,
this,
honestly, it just made sense to me. It I was learning, so like I'm a lifelong autodidact, which is a pretentious way of saying I'm self-taught at a lot of, like I'm not nowadays, not so much because I've been a business owner for a while, but I used to read a book a week, before I was a business owner, and I pretty much read nonfiction exclusively, science stuff. So I was pretty up on sports science, physics stuff, just like anything that was related to teaching jiu-jitsu. So the idea of using games to improve skill level was something that I think I was familiar with from, and I might get this wrong, so please don't like at me and, oh no, it was really from there. Like I was probably exposed to it reading the Outliers, and then looking up by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
that book, yes.
which some of the stuff in that book has been either debunked or amended since. Like the 10,000 hour rule isn't entirely accurate, but there were things in there like. There's an example that he gives of the Brazilian national soccer team and how they play a different version of like indoor intramural soccer, where because the playing field is so much smaller, there are fewer players, they get more ball handling time, they have to make decisions quicker. So like there was stuff out there about altering certain sports through either constraints or just different games that yielded higher results, right? And there was quite a bit of information about the both the Soviet Olympic program related to wrestling, and the Cuban Olympic boxing program, as well as there's quite a bit of information. I shouldn't say quite a bit, but like there's some information about the way that Thai boxers train, where there's very little hard contact to the head, and it's more kind of like harder contact to the body, very light contact to that. So like, there's tons of stuff. There's tons of, we got kids here making noise like right beside us.
I know.
There's tons of information that's been available like for decades about how athletes in both other sports and combat sports use limited games to increase their skill level within their overall sport. So I was more drawing on that information. And just trying to design games based around both the idea of creating optimal iterations. So like as many times as possible in a round, can we be doing a guard pass against really skillful resistance? As many times as possible in a round, can we be doing a sweep attempt against skillful resistance, while trying to limit the amount of time people were trying to shut things down and not let things happen. Like my observation of most people rolling at most gyms was get to closed guard or half guard as quickly as possible and stop any movement whatsoever from happening.
Yeah, and wait for the round to end.
Wait for the round to end. I hated rolling like that. I thought it was why. And I remember making a decision in like 2003 or 4 or something to not close my guard during training. And holy shit, did that ever make an incredible difference. This was before I was even thinking about like this stuff as actively as a teacher and trying to teach conceptual jiu-jitsu, just as a guy doing jiu-jitsu. When I stopped closing my guard retention, all my open guard stuff got so much better. And it's not like my closed guard got worse. I would go back to closed guard every so often and still be pretty successful with it. So there's a lot of stuff from my own learning and training process, and then from my process as a nerd, reading a lot of books and trying to get a lot of information as to how other sports do optimal training methodology. So yeah, this was stuff that from probably 20, at least 15 years ago, was stuff that I was familiar with the research and the sort of like the current meta on it, and trying to incorporate it into jiu-jitsu and design games that I thought would optimize people's experience learning.
Yeah. So it must not have been easy to go against tradition and against the grain, right? So I mean, it's
Well, so in
when-
one sense,
right?
you're right. In another sense, I didn't feel like that's what I was doing.
Okay.
Because to me, the tradition of pedagogy in sports, in combat sports, was what I was going with. The tradition in jiu-jitsu being we suck at teaching, but who cares? So like I didn't think that was an important tradition. So I'm
Okay.
I'm an
gotcha.
iconoclast
Yep,
in
yes,
some
yes.
ways,
Yeah.
but I'm not like there are people, especially in the jiu-jitsu sphere, I think that are what I would refer to as gullible contrarians, which is they will swallow any retarded bullshit as long as it's presented to them as being against the mainstream. I would say that describes a lot of instructors, especially in the last couple of years, where like show them a conspiracy and they will gobble it up as hard as they possibly can because they think that they're looking into it or like doing their own research or whatever. So those people are idiots. But it's possible to be an iconoclast based on seeking out good high level information from good sources, from sources of expertise. So it's not like I came along and was like, I'm a genius who's doing my own research and the jiu-jitsu world can suck a dick. It was like every other sport that's like a real sport that has an Olympic program, that has real coaching, that has a lot of expertise behind it, has been using these methods
Right.
to do this stuff for a while. So I'm not the one breaking tradition. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
because
right,
I actually
right.
have very little respect for that sort of thing. That is used as a fallacious argument for introducing bullshit information to people. It's what conspiracy theorists use. Like, it's a very bad argument. So I don't feel like I was going against tradition.
Right.
I feel like I was going against bad practice by a very immature community. And by say immature, I don't mean like acting like children. I mean young in the sense of development, right? Like
Right.
the jiu-jitsu world was very young when it came to professional methodology for teaching, for training, et cetera, right? Like just like the MMA world, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, everyone was leaving their chin in the gym by training full contact, shoot the box style all the time, and then being fucking brain dead when they're 40, right?
Right.
That was not an intelligent methodology, but because MMA was so young,
They didn't know
they
any other
didn't
way.
know any
Yeah.
better, right? You don't see that anymore. You don't see guys doing hard contact sparring 5-6 days a week anymore. So it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. It was a young sport that had a lot of really archaic methodology around it. So like I said, I don't feel like I was coming in like, fuck all you guys. It was like, no, there are these other sports that do this better. So let me just follow what they do because I'm not that smart.
Right.
Like I'm
You sound pretty smart to me. man.
no, I mean, I think because we live in a bubble of like a lot of idiots in the jiu-jitsu world, it's really easy to sound smart. Doesn't make me smart, right? Like me being like I'm like the smartest kid on the short bus. It's not a big achievement. So like all I was doing was just like these guys know what they're talking about, and let me just follow what they're doing and try to design games around.
Right.
it
It's
for
almost like
jiu-jitsu.
you would be stupid not to.
That's kind
not
of how
to
I
listen
viewed it.
To the smart,
yeah, like
to the real smart people.
To the real, exactly. That's kind of how I felt about it. So yeah, like I know people give me a lot of credit for being like intelligent, and I'm not saying that I'm dumb. I'm just saying that for like the people that I follow, the people that I look up to, that I think are intelligent, I'm dumb compared to those people. I don't think I'm dumb compared to like
Right.
the average
It's like
bro.
jiu-jitsu. There's always levels to
There's
this, yeah.
levels to it, exactly. Yeah. So I think that I didn't really come up with anything super revolutionary. I think I just followed what I thought was the best practice.
So if
And
anything,
because I was a little bit alone in the wilderness at that time, I had to come up with games and methodologies to try to translate what other sports were doing a lot better into the jiu-jitsu sphere. Because let's face it, jiu-jitsu is a little bit unique in that other combat sports can be codified a lot easier because of the lack of breadth of technique. So this is one area where I think jiu-jitsu is unique, and we do have to, you can't just be like, well, do what they do in wrestling or do what they do in boxing, because like, boxing is, and again, don't flame me for like slight adjustments, but jab, cross, hook, uppercut, overhand, like there aren't that many punches, but it still takes fucking years to even be competent at how to apply those few punches in
Right.
context. There's like a couple of defensive movements, you've got blocks and parries and slips, and then you've got some footwork. So like you could learn literally every move in boxing in a week. and you could still be terrible at boxing at 5 years in, depending on how you do it. Wrestling, there's a little bit more to it, but it's not like there's thousands of throws in wrestling or judo. Jiu-jitsu is vast, right? Like the obviously the depth of the other combat sports is quite deep, but the breadth is more limited. It's the focus is more narrow. So because of the breadth of jiu-jitsu, the incredible level of information out there, I don't think it's possible to codify it the same way that you can the other combat sports. So I think there's a lot more room for interpretation. I think there's a lot more room for innovation and personal expression. So I'm not trying to say that, you have to do the exact same things, but I do think there's a lot of benefit to be derived from those things. And so that's where I was, if I've come up with anything on my own, it's been trying to translate those methodologies into a way that successfully integrates like the validity of those approaches, but also leaves room for the creativity of jiu-jitsu and the fact that some details just absolutely need to be directly like given to the individual. And there are things that you can't learn through gameplay, that you have to just receive the information.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, well, were you frustrated?
I'm often frustrated, but can you be more specific?
Yes. Were you frustrated throughout the process where you feel like, hey, why aren't there more people doing this? Or were you secretly happy? Hey, well, so you guys can continue to suck, and my guys.
No, frustrated in that, like, if we want to go into like the personal side, I've been a pretty isolated individual most of my life because I don't relate to most people.
Is that why you're on the island?
No, I don't relate to the people on the island. Don't get me started on that. No, just because of like, I think anybody that's more cerebrally inclined and more inclined to think about processes less than they think about like interacting socially with people is going to be isolated. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. It's just the way that I think about things and the way that I communicate things is not the way that the majority of people do. So like, is that frustrating? Yes and no, right? Like to not feel like you can communicate with people in a way that makes you feel understood can be frustrating, but it's not something that I ever really worried about. From a professional perspective rather than a personal one, I'd say I've been frustrated by not having the same level of passion, people not having the same level of passion about this that I do. But I was never frustrated that like the community at large wasn't embracing this, because being an early adopter or being first to market is incredibly valuable in business, right? Like you can have a shitty product, and if you're first to market, you can actually succeed very well. It's not like I'm trying to have a shitty product, but knowing that I was first to market on conceptual jiu-jitsu and this kind of stuff has been extremely valuable. If everyone just was like, yeah, this is great, and everyone was doing it, I don't think I would be as differentiated from other teachers as I was in we're talking 2015 when my first instructional came out. There was nothing out there of that sort. And, when we launched the online academy, we're still the only online academy that has like a properly dedicated, resource for teachers for how to learn how to become good teachers, for how to teach conceptually, for how to create and design games. That's still something that I think we are the only one on the market doing that. So for me to be frustrated that more people aren't doing it, I'm like, not at all. That's great. Like, keep not doing that. That's cool with me. I think it'd be great if more people discovered what we do. I think it'd be great if more people do similar things and are successful too. I'm not trying to say that I don't want competition. I'm just saying it's not a source of frustration for me that people aren't adopting it. It's like I'm very much a libertarian, not in the sense of like being a 15-year-old idiot who doesn't understand politics on any level, but a libertarian in the sense like I want people to do what they want. I want people to be like on a social level, I don't want to tell people what to do. I don't want people to tell me what to do. I think everyone should do what makes them happy as long as you're not interfering with other people's lives. And so from that perspective, people can go ahead and learn jiu-jitsu however the hell they like. I want to offer people, hey, here's how I do it. Here's what I think works. And if you like it, cool. Like, I'm still shocked that I have fans. I'm still shocked that I'm asked to do, but I'm still shocked that I get recognized. Not shocked in like it's total surprise, but like shocked in a good way, where like it feels really good that
Right.
I positively impact people's lives through
For sure,
jiu-jitsu.
for sure.
But I'm still pleasantly surprised, I should say, that, you know, like somebody will be like, hey, are you Rob Biernacki? Oh, I've heard of your, I like your videos. I've heard, cool, thanks, man. Like, that's really awesome.
Dude, that's awesome.
So yeah, that just feels good, and I want to leave a positive impact on people's lives, whether it's through personal interactions, whether it's through teaching through video. So I would never want to be the guy who's like, this is the only way of doing it. I think it's good. I think that people who have an opportunity to be exposed to learning jiu-jitsu conceptually and then developing it through gameplay and gamification, I think most people are going to find that works better for them than a lot of other methods. What I'm not prepared to say is it's the only way to do it, or any one thing that I do is the only way to do it, and every other way is garbage. And although I do think the traditional way of like warm up, then random techniques, then roll is the most garbage way of teaching jiu-jitsu.
We can all agree on that.
I think
yes.
just about everybody can. So I don't think that's a very good way of teaching. But honestly, there are probably people out there who maybe learn well within that way and would rather learn that way at a school with their friends than learn a better way at a school without their friends. So I don't even want to knock those people.
Right.
Like, I would certainly knock them for like lack of ambition, but who's to say that trying to be the best you can be at jiu-jitsu is the appropriate ambition for everybody in life? I think that's also something we get caught up in the jiu-jitsu world. It's
Right.
like, this is the most important
Right.
thing in our lives.
Yeah.
So if you don't think it is, then fuck you.
Yeah, sometimes it's just about being content and happy, right?
Exactly. So like, to me, I'm at the point of my, like, especially as I get older, I'm like, I just want to be happy. You know, I want to do jiu-jitsu and I want to drive race cars. That's it.
That's awesome.
And I want everyone else to be happy, and I want them to do jiu-jitsu and do whatever thing that makes them happy. So I definitely believe very strongly in my methodology, but only to the extent that it can enhance people's lives.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
Dude, it makes total
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. So, which leads to me thinking like you, right? So
Yeah.
right now it's Tom. I'm sure there's other people, right?
Yeah.
There's you. There's Greg Souders.
Sure.
There's
Kit Dale,
right?
yeah.
So
I think Ryan Hall deserves a lot of credit for
right. He
for
just
the stuff.
doesn't. He's just not the a public proponent that comes out and say it over and over.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Right. So between the three of you, just for
Yeah.
just to make it really easy, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like they approach it a little bit differently than you, or do
I mean,
you see more
everyone does.
similarities, or-
Obviously,
or
like,
is there
I'm not-
anything you don't you disagree or agree on?
Well, like I said, I don't agree with telling people that there's one way and it's the only way and everyone else is doing it wrong, especially if you don't have any empirical proof to back that up.
Not yet, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just don't agree with that. But like I said, I really don't. I don't like getting into internet pissing contests, because all that happens is everyone gets covered in urine. It's like, it's not beneficial, right?
Right.
I'm very interested in having productive conversations that elevate people's understanding of stuff. So you know, anybody interested in that, I'm interested in. Everyone's going to approach things a little bit differently, right? Like, the way that I approach things conceptually is different than even people who I respect tremendously and look up to. I might still view it a little bit differently and put it a little bit differently. So I think everyone that's in the gamification space is doing a good job of at the very least presenting that, hey, if all you're doing is random technique then spar, especially like dead drilling where there's no resistance, I think they're doing a really good job of presenting the idea that that is not the best way to do it, and that games are a much better way of developing skills.
Right.
I'm not intimately familiar enough with every detail of how other people do it to start criticizing how they do it. So I'll just say positive things, which is, I think the more people that are aware of gamification as a source of increased progress in jiu-jitsu, the better.
Right. So
Right.
which is good, because
Yeah.
you guys have three very different approaches.
Very
to
different
training.
exactly.
So some people will be drawn to you, some people will be drawn to Greg,
Yeah.
some people will be drawn to Kit, and then but it's all for the better.
Yeah,
Right.
I would say that, you know, of the three of us, I'm the one that uses the least amount of clickbait inflammatory stuff to draw attention. I try to be as honest about it as I can be. I think this is what works. I think this is why it works. And if you like that and you like dick jokes, then I'm probably a good guy to go to. I'm sure Kit is also really good at dick jokes. So if you like
Being
dick jokes
Australian, sure.
and being Australian and that stuff, then Kit's a good guy to go to. I think Greg is way more intense about it. And if that's your thing, he's a great guy to go to. So like, I don't think you're going to go wrong with the information that comes out of any of these sources for like, here's how you use games to get better. I think they're all great.
Right, as long as you can open your mind to want to look into something new.
As long as you're not going to become a weird cult member who's just like, this is the only way, and in which case, like, you're not going to make a lot of friends. Yeah,
Right.
like, let me just tell you straight up, you're going to become that person that's annoying to everybody in your life. So I would caution you against that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So speaking of you being old, 47.
Yeah.
So other people who are still competing in their 40s and at a high level, such as Cyborg Abreu, such as Ragnar Hosha. So does that mean you're
we're gonna go there.
Does that mean you're also on steroids?
Well, I mean, I think my results show that I'm not. I mean, I don't really know what to say about that because, like I said, I don't want to
Just
turn
putting on the spot, bro.
Yeah, I don't want to like turn around and shit on people because, like, obviously, like steroids are rampant in our sport, and if you want to compete at the high level, you almost have to do them.
You almost don't have a choice.
I mean,
you always have a choice,
you know what? I shouldn't say that. A, you always have a choice. B, there are plenty of great examples. I shouldn't say plenty, but there are great examples of people who, by all accounts, are natural that still compete at a high level.
Right.
I don't know. This is something where I don't want to have a strong opinion on it because I don't like the fact that
Right.
black belts have strong opinions on shit that's like way beyond their purview. I don't think that rampant, obvious steroid use is great for a sport if you want to take it like mainstream, which is what we claim to want to do.
Right.
But I think there are many other practices in jiu-jitsu that are equally distasteful to an outside observer that we don't seem to have a problem with. So to like pick on steroid use by itself, even though I think it's bad, and I think it's especially bad for casual practitioners. And when I say casual, I mean literally anyone who's not doing ADCC or adult black belt kind of level.
Which is
Man, you're just
everybody.
compromising so much of your future,
Right.
Potential health for essentially nothing. Like it's
Right.
one thing if you're gonna make millions of dollars, but like I just think it's like I don't think it's great long term for your health. I think that.
Yeah, what for? For a $5 medal? You know?
I think it's absurd that when I go to Nogi Worlds and I compete, the amount of guys that are obviously saucing in like the Masters division, it's like, dude, do you not want to be like functional when you're 60? Like, but again, that's a judgment that I'm making. So I don't want to say that it's wrong because like
But I guess
whatever makes you happy.
They'll
like,
just have to live with their decisions.
exactly.
Right?
You're gonna fuck around. You're gonna find out. You know, your endocrine system is fucked when you're 50 or 55, and yada yada. Like that's a choice that you're gonna have to make.
Right.
So I personally don't think that choice is worth it.
So let's. Bring
I
it
don't
back
even
to-
think it's worth it at the highest
So
level.
let's bring it back to you personally then.
Yeah.
So what still drives you? Why are you still, trying to compete?
Well, I started competing late, right? Like I didn't do my first gi tournament till I was a black belt, and I did one no gi tournament as a brown belt. So my competition career happened late, and I really didn't get a chance to, like, as a young guy, show my jiu-jitsu. And I think it, like, we talked about skills. Competing is a skill.
Right.
You can be very good at jiu-jitsu and be fucking dog shit at competing, and I was. And I don't think I'm great at competing yet, but I think I'm okay at it. I'm getting good-ish at, like, showing up and being able to show some of my skills.
Oh, I would say winning the absolute division. It's a.
No, like, I'm not trying to be, like, fake humble. I just mean, like, there's so many levels to this game that, like, I'm a pretty good Masters level competitor, right? Like, I'm pretty good at, for where I compete, and I think I'm pretty good, like, especially considering this year I did ADCC Opens where the Masters division is 35 and up.
Right.
Usually IBJJF, I'm Master 4, so it's fellow, like, really old fucks. So that it felt that felt for me like a really big achievement to win an ADCC Open, to get silver at an ADCC Open against guys that were all like 10 years younger than me. And like that, don't get me wrong. So I'm not trying to be like, I'm not that good. I'm pretty good at this stuff. But I'm not capable of competing in an adult division, not because of the skill level, but because of the fact that I don't train, or I'm not capable of training with the level of intensity that would enable me to do like 10-minute rounds against adult division competitors, right? So, and because I'm not willing to take steroids to achieve the training rate that those guys do, that's not something I'm ever going to achieve. So what motivates me is just, I started late, so I want to see what I can do. And also what motivates me is I really try to build my identity around being a guy who follows through on what he says he's going to do. And I really want to lead from the front for my students and show them that even somebody who has a reputation on the line, like I'm no longer a nobody black belt, I'm a guy that people know about. So I've got more on the line when I compete. So I kind of want to approach it like, hey guys, if I can do it and I've got something to lose, you got nothing to lose. Right. You may as well do it. Mm-hmm. Because I do believe that competition enhances your jiu-jitsu experience immensely. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very easy for people to make excuses for why they don't want to compete when they're really just not being honest with themselves about the fact that they're just chicken shit to lose.
Just scared, yeah.
They're just scared to lose, or scared to fail, or scared to disappoint someone, or whatever. And so, we all have those fears,
right?
And I think conquering those things has a value. And if I want to pontificate about that ever, I've got to be the guy that does it. So I think that that was what motivated me to compete a lot more, historically. Nowadays, it's more just, it's a challenge. I want to see what I can achieve. I'm probably going to compete until I'm 50, and then I don't know that I'm going to want to put my body through it.
Right into the sunset.
Or hopefully on a win, and not like a string of devastating, embarrassing losses. But and man, who knows? Like if I still feel good, and because I am old and my body does break down. Like I spent most of this year, even though this was my most successful year in competition, I spent most of the year training without using one or both of my hands just because of injuries and trying to rehab stuff. So, as long as I'm able to do this and not feel my body degrade too much, I'm going to do it.
Right.
If that changes sooner, I might stop competing sooner. If it changes later, I might compete longer. Yeah, right now what motivates me is just that. And the fact that at my club nowadays, we've got this really amazing core of people who've really embraced competing and training together and doing conditioning together. And we just did sprints yesterday and we had all of my guys that are going to Nogi Worlds, we're all doing sprints. Then we had other guys there just cheering us on.
Right,
The team atmosphere is so incredible. It's hard not to be motivated when you got guys showing up for you to do your conditioning, even though they're not even doing conditioning that day. They're just there to pump you up and make you feel good. So I think having that at my club right now, having this group of guys and girls that are into this stuff, is really firing me up.
Nice.
Yeah. So it started out as me trying to motivate my students, and now it's turned around, and now they're motivating me. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So because I know we have a hard.
Yeah, we got a little bit of the clock. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why if there's thank you so much for your time.
Oh, dude, my pleasure.
Dude, I love that conversation.
Thank you so much. Me too, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. So before we go, anything you want to plug? Anything you want to tell people about?
Right now? Let's just thank you for still being here. If you are still here. The instructional with Stefan, the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu and gamification instructional is going to be coming out late December, early January, hopefully. So, if you're not interested in getting a subscription to my online academy, definitely get that. Support Stefan. He's an amazing resource for our community and deserves your support. If you want to send me money, BJJ, well, you can just PayPal me. But no, if you if you want to send me money for value, then bjjconcepts.net.com. If this comes out before Black Friday, there's a Black Friday sale on. If it doesn't, you missed the Black Friday sale. Sorry about your luck.
You missed it.
But we have one every year.
And pay full price is worth it.
There you go. So you can check that out. And if you haven't heard of our visiting student program, Anybody from any academy around the world is welcome to come and train with us for free for 1 week. You can stay at my place. We have visitors all the time. I got 3 or 4 people at my house right now that are there for the Nogi Worlds Camp. We constantly have people coming around from all over the world. They train with us. They hang out with us. So as long as you give me some notice, let me know you're coming. All you got to do is get to Nanaimo. I will pick you up from the ferry or the airport. You can stay at my house. You can train in my club for free for a week. Do take advantage of it. I love meeting people from all around the world and getting a chance to share jiu-jitsu with them. So yeah, I think those are all the things I wanted to plug.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do it, guys. Do it. And thanks again for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, brother.
That was good.